Hello everyone, my name is Dahlia Ferguson and I am doing the presentation on the contemporary theory. And for the contemporary theory, I have chosen emotion-focused therapy. Emotion-focused therapy was co-founded by Leslie Greenberg and Susan Johnson. Susan Johnson actually she does more of the emotion focused therapy for couples. And so I'm going to be talking about more for individuals, which Leslie Greenberg does a lot of work on the emotion focused therapy for individuals. So I just want to tell you some things about Leslie Greenberg. Leslie Greenberg, and I'm going by the information in the Counseling and Psychotherapy by TAN, has some information. So Leslie Greenberg was born in September 30th, 1945 in South Africa, in Johannesburg, South Africa to be exact. And then he migrated to Canada, where he is a professor. Well, right now he's actually retired, but he was a professor at York University. Leslie Greenberg is married and has 2 children and currently lives in Toronto, Canada. He's also known for a lot of the work that he's done in experiential therapy. So when you look in the text, it does have a section about it, but it's not a large section about the work that they've done with EFT. The reason that I chose EFT because it is emotion focused. And if we look at our emotions or anyone's emotions are tied to traumatic events and incidents. When you go somewhere or do something, and it can be something that is linked to something that you see as traumatic or something that's a traumatic threat, your emotions is what helps you to realize that you are going through something that is traumatic. TAN page 293 speaks about the reason for emotion-focused therapy, and I just want to read what it says here. It says, clients are thus helped to express intense emotions such as anger, deal with defenses, and work toward a softening of feelings so that connection between, it says couples, but a connection with an individual can be restored and deepened. Greenberg has done a lot of work, and there are a lot of things that you can look up with his work and his explanation of EFT on YouTube, and I'm going to put a clip right here so that you can see the work that he has done and just him speaking about what EFT is.
EFT stands for Emotion Focused Therapy, which is not the same as Emotion Freedom Technique, but essentially it's a therapy that focuses on emotion, and it sees emotion as at the basic datum of human experience. That's the very first thing we feel in the world, and so it's a way of working with emotion. But it has 2 important components, which is we work with a relationship, with an empathic relationship, but we also have different interventions for different kinds of problems that arise in the session. So I like to think about it as islands of work within an ocean of empathy. And these islands of work have been studied, and they're what we call marker-guided interventions. A person in a session reaches a particular state, like a self-criticism or unfinished business with a significant other, and then we have ways of intervening. So these markers are opportunities for different kinds of interventions. So we work with emotions, the relationship is really important, and we have different interventions for different in-session problem states.
Greenberg explains that the EFT helps clients to work through their emotions. Seligman and Reichenberg on page 160, they state that EFT combines person-centered empathic responding with the directiveness of Gestalt therapy. And it, as a therapist, guides the client towards certain emotion processing activities that will result in new insights in their client. And when I read further down, it talked about the ways that they do it, and they give the client homework. So the homework involves homework, silence, vocal tone, appropriate therapist, nonverbal behavior that indicates interest, experiential teaching, and these all help the client to tease out their underlying feelings. So this, I like this because it is something that is more actionable. Although this is a form of using psychotherapy to help the clients work through what it is that they are feeling or what it is that they are going through, it helps them really focus on the emotional part of their healing. And they're able to really look at this process of healing and be in tune with what they're going through and looking at everything in a moment to moment, here and now, rather than saying, let me look at the past, but what is going on right now? What are my feelings right now in this process at this time? I also like this theory of counseling, or this counseling method, because it really helps the client to be able to regulate their own emotions. In my research of EFT, emotion focused therapy, I found one study. It is really more recent. It is as recent as February 2020. The study is called Learning Emotion Focused Therapy, Certified Emotion Focused Therapist Perspective. And so I went and read down about the perspective of the therapist. They used 10 therapists who stated that this kind of therapy was challenging to learn. But what it did was it helped them to it helped the therapist to develop a clearer understanding of the client's emotions, and it contributed to their own personal growth. So this therapy was challenging for them to learn, but they were able to learn new skills and techniques. And the thing about this therapy, because it is focused on emotions, during the process, the therapist actually ended up being triggered with their emotions. Some emotions were positive and some emotions were negative, but the emotions were intense. So some of the therapists had a hard time to cope. EFT, the thing about EFT, because it is an emotion focused therapy, so it's focused on the emotions, it uses a lot of role play in this therapy. And when researching this therapy, I didn't really see any scales or anything that specifically evaluates the emotions of the clients. And so that's kind of one thing I didn't like about it. I didn't like the fact that I couldn't find a lot of information, and even in our textbook there was really small portion in both of the textbooks regarding emotion focused therapy. This therapy intrigued me because it focuses on emotions, and what it does is it helps the client to be able to express their emotions and for them to be able to do the work to regulate their emotions. So that's really the goal of this therapy. And the therapist plays an important part because how, when I talked about the corrective emotional experience, that had a lot to do with the therapist and how the therapist will respond to the client versus how they thought the therapist was going to respond to them. And so that was... Now, I did find another article on emotion-focused therapy, and it is called Rational Dialogue and Emotion-Focused Therapy. I get so tongue-tied saying emotion-focused therapy, so I'm just going to start saying EFT. So in EFT, there was a study that stated that it is successful for women in this study who had severe anxiety. and the rationale, or what this therapy is really based on, is the Rogerian conditions. And we learned about Rogerian earlier on in class, and I believe we did a post on it, but we learned about that earlier on. So it talks about the conditions of empathic attunement, unconditional positive regard, and congruence or genuineness. So it talks about how the Rogerian therapy is really related and goes into EFT. So I like that part about it as well. One of the questions within this assignment asks us, how well does the theory address faith and cultural dimensions? Everyone has emotions. And when we're looking at emotions biblically, we're looking at discernment, we're looking at sin, we are looking at sacrifice, we're looking at obedience. And so if we take all of those emotions and all of those feelings that are tied to it, these are definitely things that come up in therapy, in terms of anxiety, in terms of depression, in terms of grief and loss. And so this EFT therapy, although it is emotion focused, it definitely helps with looking at biblical principles in scripture, as well as looking at therapy that can be used in everyday life to help the client regulate their emotions, as well as helping the therapist to be able to understand the client's emotions, to get them to a point of healing using Christ-centered and Christ-based principles in therapy. Now, I have coaching clients in my private practice, and I do pastoral counseling as well. And so I'd never really looked up EFT, but EFT is actually some parts of it that I do use in my practice, because I do use it with my clients to talk about their emotions, about why they're feeling anxious, and how can we focus on this emotion right now, looking at your hearing now, so that we can work on what's going on right now. And so when the question is asked about how compatible is this theory to Christian worldview, in my opinion, it is very compatible, because as I stated previously, it does go into the emotions that you feel around sin, the emotions that you feel around disobedience or obedience. It goes into all of those emotions that ties into anxiety that a lot of people have. And so this is compatible with the worldview. It's even compatible to use this theory in a coaching practice, like I have a coaching practice. I do like this therapy for those reasons, because a lot of times what people come in to me for is because of the emotions that they're having. And so when I can do emotion focused therapy, now that I've learned about this, I can use this on my clients to help them get better outcomes in their lives, and to help them heal past the trauma and the hurt and the grief that they are currently experiencing. Again, my name is Dahlia Ferguson, and I am doing this presentation. And when I'm thinking about the gap in this theory, I think about the fact that there's not a lot more studies out there than there are right now with the current therapies, Rogerian, Gestalt, and all those things. And that's evidenced by what we see in our textbook, and when you're searching online. There is a lot of information. I will list below some of the resources that you can go to look at Dr. Greenberg, as well as two of the articles that I've spoke about in my presentation. So thank you all for tuning in and watching this video, and I look forward to the responses. Thank you. Bye.